Hey everybody, welcome to Fun Music Special Episode 714. Hmm, 714. Babe Ruth? Is that right? Okay. Or Hank Aaron. All right, a lot of people have been putting up their favorite artists, like a list of 10, 12 more, and I don't do things small. So this is going to be a list of 40 of my personal favorite artists. That's right. Maybe I'm being audacious. I don't know. But it seemed that these 40 were very solid. And if I went above 40, it wasn't as solid. That's why I chose 40. So I'm going to increase the screen size a little bit just to make it easier to read the names of these artists. I'm not going to show any albums. Here, let's see how that looks. 40 personal favorite artists. Oh, yeah, I like that. All right, let's get into the 40th one. I'm going to say a little bit about each one. Hopefully this will go quick. Do. Oh, little note. If you see an asterisk by one of the names, that means I've seen them live. All right. I've seen more acts live that are not in my top 40, but I thought I would make mention of that. I'll place myself as a teenager in the 70s. Okay, let's go to number 40. I hope you can see it down there. Maybe I can make it a little larger. There we go. How's that? Number 40, Traffic. And like I said, I've got a reason for each one of these. And definitely when it comes to Traffic, I think it was back in 1970, early 70s, somewhere 1974, I believe it was, because I used to listen to K-Rock here in Los Angeles. And that's kind of where my taste got formed in 1974, listening to K-Rock, a lot of blues rock. And the particular song I heard by Traffic was Rock and Roll Stew, which I immediately fell in love with. And then maybe in the back of my mind, I might heard earlier when I was young, like 10 years old, maybe Empty Pages was in the top 40. Maybe that was the case. I don't quite recall 100% if that's the case, but I know for a long time Empty Pages was my favorite song until I heard Rock and Roll Stew. And they have so many more great songs, right? They got that album, John Barleycorn Must Die, pretty much a perfect album. And then, the other albums have a lot going for them. In fact, I remember later on laughing very hard when I learned about the song from that same album that had Rock and Roll Stew, right? That song, Hole in My Shoe. And even the young ones, that British TV show, and that show did a cover of Hole in My Shoe, very comedic one. But I like it because it's so imaginative. It's one of the best psychedelic songs, period. That's why I chose Traffic. Number 40. So these other 39 I like even better. Let's make sure. Number 39, the Eagles, and they got an asterisk. But I have to tell the truth. The only reason I saw the Eagles is because my first ex-wife took me to the show. I think it was in the 90s, 94. Was that the year they went on tour again, or was it later? I don't remember. But I do know it was a great show. They are perfectionists. They really are. Don Henley is a perfectionist. And Glenn Frey was alive, so it had to be that time. And for me, 1974 again, On the Border. I love that album, top to bottom, every song. That was my introduction to the Eagles. And of course, after that, 75, One of These Nights, another perfect album for me. And 76's Hotel California was a near perfect album for me. It kind of got slow toward the end there, but I've learned to appreciate the full album, Hotel California. And I even like The Long Run. I think The Long Run is a good album too. It may have some lesser songs on it, but I like it a lot. So That's my Eagles history. That's why they're number 39. So in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, I have a little more history with the Eagles than I do with Traffic. That's why they're 39, Traffic's 40. Let's see if my logic holds for number 38. We got the Allman Brothers Band. Now, that's a band that's easy to like for me. I mean, I remember hearing them way in the beginning there, what, 73 and Midnight Rider? Maybe Greg Allman did that as a solo back then. I think that was the case. Greg Allman's version is better than the Allman Brothers version, but I would lump it together. In fact, I should put Greg Allman on there, really, to tell the truth. He's such a great artist. I don't know if that would all fit in one line, though. Let's see, Greg Allman slash. Oh, it fits in one line. Okay, I'm saving that. Because I like his solo work. It's spottier, but in these last couple albums he made before he died, oh, they were just so great. The retro blues had that 50s feel. So I have to include Greg Allman, absolutely. And the Allman Brothers albums, right? And that first album, the self-titled one, what was that, 1969? Oh, that's a perfect album. And the other albums are near perfect. In fact, deep down, one of my favorite Allman Brothers albums is from 1979, Enlightened Rogues. I really like that album. I really do. I was 19 when that album came out. I loved it to death. Really did. Much better than Win, Lose, or Draw. Those who know what I'm talking about. Oh, that was just okay, but Enlightened Rogues was a real comeback for me. And of course, with different lineups, they had made some great albums later on too, right? Okay, enough about that. Moving on. Number 37. Oh, it did take two lines. We'll have to just pick it away then. It's going to mess up my order. Sorry, Greg, because look who's 37. Linda Ronstadt. Oh, yeah. My early teenage crush. The one who shaped my mental picture of what my future wife would look like Linda Ronstadt. But I don't know. Finding somebody who could sing like Linda Ronstadt, that's a whole nother thing, right? She was a phenomenal singer. And probably my best memory of Linda Ronstadt's work was when she had Blue Bayou as a single. I think it was 1978, because that was the year I moved in with my girlfriend, who became my first wife. And I remember we lived in a studio across the street from LA City College. And every morning it seemed like she had to get up at 6 o'clock. So we had the clock radio set to 6 o'clock, and that clock radio would come on to KIIS, and it always seemed to be playing Blue Bayou, 6 a.m. So it's a very fond memory for me. But there's a lot of other songs that are great. I mean, from the very beginning, she had so many great songs. But Heart Like a Wheel is a perfect album, absolutely. And Prisoner in Disguise comes close. But Heart Like a Wheel, perfection, a half hour of perfection. All right. Have I said enough about Linda? She had many incarnations, but definitely the 70s was it for me. Let's see, number 36 is, oh yeah, Stan Ridgway and Walla Voodoo. uh, my introduction to them was in 1980, I think it was, 80, 81. That first EP had like four songs on it, I think. And they had their version of Ring of Fire, right, the Johnny Cash song. And it was Halloween. And my birthday is Halloween, so I dug it completely. And I love to crank it because the sound was so good. So I loved everything they did there. And their subsequent albums, yeah, pretty much every bit as good. And why? Well, you can see why. Stan Ridgway, definitely one of the best storytelling singer-songwriters in my book. I love his albums, Mosquitoes. That's a near perfect album. There's a spotty one later on called Drywall. No, that was the name of the group, right? Drywall. It's called Work the Dumb Oracle. Yeah, that was the name of the album. That has some of my absolute favorite Stan Ridgway songs, right? Like Mercedes Blues, I think it's called. And that other one, Police Call. That's it, Police Call. Oh, I love those to death. And I saw Stand Ridgway live at the Coach House and McCabe's, right? So I saw him out for a couple of years there, definitely. Number 35. This is an easy pick. 10cc. Their first two albums to me are perfect albums. And even I didn't like the original soundtrack as much. The third album, that one grew on me. But the fourth album, How Dare You, right? The last one of the original four members. I loved that album too. I think it was because it came out in 76 when I was 16. I got my numbers right. And that's got probably my favorite 10cc song. Uh, I've got all the songs in my head right now. Don't Hang Up. That's the song. And then from that same album, Mandy Fly Me. Perfection. I just love them. But possibly my favorite 10cc song is Wall Street Shuffle. That may be an obvious choice. But they have some ones that are not as well known, like Somewhere in Hollywood. Wow, that's perfection. And Old Wild Men makes me laugh. The Hospital song really makes me laugh. And Clockwork Creep, too, for that matter. So I have a lot of favorites. In fact, just a few years ago, I discovered that album that came out years later. I think it's called something like, I don't think it's Welcome to the Jungle. That's Guns N' Roses. But maybe that was the name of the album because there's a song on that album called 24 Hours, and it's every bit as good as anything they ever did. And it's kind of like a 7-minute epic. So I would highly recommend that song, as well as those first two albums and the fourth album. Original soundtrack's good too. I just like the others better. Okay. A lot to like. And that's only number 35. Let's go to 34. Oh man, Roy Orbison, one of the very best voices, period. Just about everything he sang. I'm like a fan of over 50 of his songs. But I think one of my favorites, he did some remakes and some originals, but I think my favorite one is Sleepy Hollow. And there's another one I know is definitely a remake called House Without Windows. If you don't know those, check them out. I mean, everybody knows Pretty Woman, but Sleepy Hollow and House Without Windows, those are my favorites of Roy Orbison. And there's a lot of favorites that you can like for Roy Orbison. I don't want to name them all right now, it'll take too long, but definitely, possibly my favorite vocalist. And I think the Traveling Wilburys would agree with me, right? Okay, 33. Oh, something contemporary almost, right? 21st century, the future sound of London, right? They started out making electronic music that you can dance to. And they had that album Dead Cities, which was my introduction. I think that was in 1996. I love that album from top to bottom, even though toward the end of the album it started getting slower. But then they surprised me in 2001. They came out with an album called The Isness, and it's a totally different direction for them. One that I guess failed, but it's like hippy dippy psychedelic electronica. And I like it even more. The Isness has got to be one of my favorite albums that most people don't know about. But I love it top to bottom, and it's because I'm a teenager of the 70s, early 70s, right? Rooted in the late 60s. That's kind of where this music is rooted from too, but it's got the modern electronica as well. So highly recommend it if you haven't heard The Future Sound of London. And it makes me think of Black Moth Super Rainbow too as well, but they're not my top 40, but they're also worth investigating in the electronica category. Right. All right. I think I can move on to number 32. There's a name that's way too familiar. Creedence Clearwater Revival, right? They owned 1969 and 1970 with four albums. And wow, I mean, those first, what, 4 or 5 albums are perfection. I love every song. I think one of my favorite songs is Graveyard Train. and no, not bootleg. Bootleg's good too, don't get me wrong. But not one of those long ones that goes on long. And I'm not talking about I heard it through the grapevine, which is also spectacular. They owned it, right? Even though it was originally Marvin Gaye, which is also fantastic. I can't remember everything right now, right? But there's just so many good songs there, right? Bad Moon Rising was a hit, I think, when I was 10 years old. And so that was a top 40 introduction to Creedence Clearwater Revival for me. Oh, what a band, what a band. And we're only at number 32. What's 31? Hey, that asterisk should stand for they should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Yeah. But I saw them live in 1980 for the A tour, and the opening act was UK. Talk about a great double bill. UK missed getting in this top 40. They're close. But Jethro Tull, a lot of people like Jethro Tull, they really should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame because they've got those classic albums. Everybody loves Thick Like a Brick, but I'm one of those few minority that's more partial to Passion Play. And yet, two other albums might be even more perfect. I'm the highlights on Passion Play. I even like The Hare Who Lost His Spectacles. I mean, I'm one of those. Makes me laugh. I'm a poet, so maybe that's why I like it. But they have the album Songs from the Wood. Came out when I was 17 and 77. That is a perfect album. I even like Ring Out Solstice Bells. I mean, I'm not religious, but that's a good song. And the album A, the one I went to the concert for, right? Because they had Eddie Jobson playing violin and keyboards. So that was just great. It was a well-written album. I liked every song on that album. Like Batteries Not Included comes to mind right away. Black Sunday, of course, a more conventional song on the album. I think it's like 6 or 7 minutes. They would open the concert with that. So, a lot to like for Jethro Tull, right? And only number 31. These 40 are very solid for me. 30. Bob Dylan, you're probably going, how can that be so low? Well, this is where I have to admit I'm not a child of the 60s, right? I had to go, for me, the 60s is like a history book. I go back, see what I like, and there's a lot to like with Bob Dylan, that's for sure. Right? Brilliant songwriter, influenced the Beatles, obviously, and John Lennon in particular. And that first Freewheeling has is that the one that has Masters of War on it? Because the Masters of War is just bow down to perfection politically. Of course, Lady and Lady comes to mind, right? His voice is kind of different there. That was interesting. Of course, All Along the Watchtower, which Jimi Hendrix took to another level, but Dylan's is great too. And then he's got that perfect album, Blood on the Tracks. That is a perfect album. That is one of the best albums ever made. Best Dylan album. I think many people would agree with me. And Desire that followed was almost as good, right? So a lot of individual songs there. I liked a lot. Stuck Inside of Memphis with the Mobile Blues or something, I think it's called. Rainy Day Women, and oh, you could just go on and on. He's got at least 20 plus Stone classics, right? Number 29, Queen. Now, Queen is an interesting history for me. I did see them live in 1977 when I was 17. And at that time, what was the album? I think it was A Day at the Races because I was a big fan. It's one of my favorite Queen songs is White Man. And of course, Tie Your Mother Down. And that all came on the heels of Night at the Opera, right? The Immortal Bohemian Rhapsody, and that's a perfect album. Uh, the Year of 39 is a song I've always liked, and I'm in love with my car. Easy to like. And I even remember one of the first singles I bought was Killer Queen from Sheer Heart Attack. That's a near perfect album too. And then after that, News of the World, that's a near perfect album as well. Loved it. A lot to like with Queen, right? And individual songs maybe later on. There was the Immortal Live Aid performance, what to like. And of course, I bought the first couple Queen albums, Queen 1 and Queen 2. They're more proggy. I enjoyed them a lot when I was young, but I gravitate toward the albums I've already mentioned. And maybe I heard Seven Seas of Rhye too many times. Number 28. Hey, this is a personal favorite of mine, definitely. When I was 17, 18, I had a friend named Frank. We were coworkers in the drafting office when I was 18. And when he loved prog music, I mean, he was really into it. And I don't know if he introduced me to this. This is more jazz fusion, Jeff Lorber fusion. That had, I found out later, Kenny G, right, was the flutist. And I just loved Water Sign. That's a perfect album. Highly recommended. And they grew on me like a fungus. That music grew on me like a fungus. And several years later, I ventured into a few later albums. I think there's a song called Night Lady. It's a really gorgeous song, but Water Sign is perfection. And the first album is near perfection. Soft Space, not as much. That was the album in between. But those two albums, woo huge favorites. Love them. Play them in the car. Wife likes them. Yeah, that's a winner. That's a winner. That's a favorite. Okay, 27. Small Faces Humble Pie. And I have to admit, I learned mostly about these two bands, right, later in life. But when I was 14, listening to that famous K-Rock in 1974, I heard a song called Thunderbox. I didn't know who it was by. And I had a recording of it, and I played it for some guy in a record store, and he didn't know what it was either. So I thought, oh man, that's a drag. I remember thinking, oh, the lead singer's a female, right? Because it had the female voices, but now I know those were the Blackberries. And the lead singer, of course, the utterly legendary Steve Marriott, who laid the template for Robert Plant with his version of You Need Lovin'. Just listen to it, you'll know I'm right. And then I learned about Small Faces, who had so many great albums, right? Singles. Itchy Park is the one everybody knows. I got, but they have so many good songs. I think one of my favorites is one I discovered a little later on, The Autumn Stone from a 1969 album. And Humble Pie. Oh my God, Humble Pie. Uh, you would think Smokin' would be my favorite album, but it's not. That album rocks really hard. And of course, it leads to the live album, which is legendary as live albums go. But I have to admit, I prefer Humble Pie after Peter Frampton left. Heresy. uh, the album Eat It that came after. So it was a two-record set, I understand. Uh, I love that album. It's not a perfect album. It's got a live side. That must be the fourth side, which is just okay, like I said. But the blues rock, otherwise on there, like Drugstore Cowboy is one of my absolute favorite songs. And yeah, I'm thinking of the lyrics of it right now. Higher than a hornet's nest. uh, and then they do some remixes as well. They're just fantastic. Eat It is a great album, and Thunderbox is a good album too. I later learned that Thunderbox was the album that followed that, '74. That's a good album too. There's some good remix on there as well of 99 Pounds, which I think was originally Ann Peebles. Love Ann Peebles. She missed the top 40. Uh, yeah, so as you can see, a lot to like. Humble Pie, so many good songs. I ventured all the way down the catalog. I went to the obscure stuff, right? Street Rats was the original falling off, right? But there's a lot of gems. It's mainly because of Steve Marriott. Absolutely. And they did a remake on the first album of Desperation, the Steppenwolf song. That's fantastic too. Yeah, see, so I can go on and on about humble pie. Better move on. 26. Oh, Nine Inch Nails has a very special chapter in my musical life because I remember hearing them. I think it was 1993, the Broken album, and there was a song on it called Wish. I really liked it. It was just harder than about anything I'd ever listened to up to that point. Really liked it a lot. I liked it so much that I told my, I think it was 14 at the time, my 14-year-old son. We went to a record store, you know, those things called record stores we used to go to. We went to a record store because he was living up north, Northern California, and I paid him a visit. That was around the time of the 1994 Northridge earthquake, you know, that I recall. We'd gone to a record store the day before, and our thing was, you know, he'd recommend an album for me, I'd recommend an album for him, I'd buy an album for him, you know. So I bought Broken for him, and then I don't remember if it was at that time, but he bought me an album that is one of my favorites. I'll talk about it later. Yeah. But then I remember sending him a cassette the next year of the Downward Spiral, right? And he loves that album. It's one of his absolute favorites. And I think Nine Inch Nails might be his favorite act altogether. Right. He saw them live just recently. Didn't invite me though. Oh well. He's an old guy now. He's 47. But Nine Inch Nails, The Fragile, another great album. I mean, a lot of good songs. A Copy of a Copy came years later, right? Uh, and I always joke when I listen to Nine Inch Nails, it makes me want to commit crimes. But I don't go through with it. I just enjoy the music. Number 25, Nancy Griffith. Oh man, all these have a history for me, and she's got an asterisk because I remember seeing her live back in 1985, I think it was, at the Strawberry Festival in Northern California. But my love for her was born out of that album, Once in a Very Blue Moon, which I think was in '84. It's country music, it's folky music, it's bluegrassy music. She has quite a voice, and she's a great songwriter. I mean, of the female songwriters, I think she's my favorite. And later on, she would talk about her influences and record songs by people who influenced her. But Last of the True Believers is the album that came out after that. And I think that was the one that came out in '85. It is a great album, well, perfect album, just like Once in a Very Blue. Those are two perfect albums. She has some earlier albums too, Poet in My Window, which I love, not as much. And she had an original album that was on a different label, which was good. But Listen to Very Blue Moon, Last of the True Believers, perfection, perfection. She has that elevator song. Can't remember the title right now, but it was about the Woolworth store. Love at the Five and Dime. There, that's the title. That's possibly her best song. She's got a lot of great songs. A lot of great songs. Number 24. Speaking of a lot of great songs, Cat Stevens. Now, I probably had a more conventional introduction to Cat Stevens, right? He was top 40 music. But then I actually bought the albums and realized he had songs that were not hits that were great too. And they used his music in that movie Harold and Maude, which I learned about when I was a little older. Not when it came out. I was only 12. I think that was 72. But when I saw that film, Harold and Maude, wow, that was just a great film with the great soundtrack. It's one of the best films with the best soundtracks you can watch and listen to. The two work together. So it was a masterful job of a marriage of soundtrack with movie. And soundtrack is really not the right term for it, right? Because these are individual songs. Like I Wish is one of my favorites. What's that one? Gotta Sing Out. It's a great song and just just everything that was used in the movie was pretty much perfection. And then, much to my surprise, I think it was in 1975, Numbers, his album Numbers came out, and it was after Foreigner. Foreigner, not so good, but Numbers, I love that album because it has the song Drywood on it, which is not a well-known song, but it's just as good as his other hits. I mean, now everybody's heard of Morning is Broken, right? From the early one, Peace Train, all that, but Drywood is every bit as good. Numbers, I highly recommend that album. If you're like me, you like to venture beyond just the hits, and Numbers is a great place to go because it's a great album. Almost perfect. 23. Oh, another obvious one, The Doors, right? But I was too young, right? The Doors was in the late 60s, but in 1979, there was a re-interest in the Doors, maybe because of the Doors movie. And so I got totally into their catalog. But first, I bought the compilations. Weird Scenes Inside the Gold Mine was the one I bought. So I got to hear obscure songs like Peace Frog, you know, Waiting for the Sun. It's one of my favorites. It's like a sing-along for me. And that first album, oh my Lord, yeah, that's a perfect album, isn't it? Right? Begins with Break On Through, ends with the end, and everything in between. Perfection. Not to mention, Jim Morrison had a great voice, not a conventional voice, but definitely well suited to the keyboards of Ray Manzarek, and it's just a perfect combination there. Got to move on. 22. That's right. I saw The Who live, but that was after Keith Moon had died, I believe, because I saw them. It was either 79 or 80 or 81 or even 82. I don't remember what year. I think it was 80. So I think Keith Moon had already died. Uh, But I also remember going to the Cinerama Dome in Hollywood, right? That was a movie theater, and I watched The Kids Are All Right, and the sound was so good in the Cinerama Dome. It was just like being at a concert. So then I definitely went back into their catalog, right? Who Are You? Who by Numbers? Quadrophenia has probably some of their very best songs. But, it's a little spotty of a record for me. The one that I think is consistently wonderful is Tommy, which of course was made into a movie, which is a great movie too. I like the movie a lot. I like the soundtrack a lot. Uh, they work together and apart. It's just a brilliant piece of work. Tommy is one of the greatest records ever made in the rock era. Absolutely. And then of course I bought Meaty, Beady, Big and Bouncy. Had their singles from before then, and the Who Live at Leeds, the original version and the newer extended one that includes Tommy. And those are wonderful too. Those are perfection as well. And I even got into a quick one because of Rock and Roll Circus, the Rolling Stones Rock and Roll Circus movie, TV show. So definitely a whole lot of Who in my life. And I keep revisiting them every few years. I listen to them too much, I get burned out on them. Then a few years later, I go back, fall in love all over again, find different reasons to love them. I also remember just now that in 1981, that was the year of the breakup of my very brief first marriage, which only lasted like 2.5 years. And I remember listening to You Better You Bet as inspirational music to get over the breakup and find somebody new, that kind of thing. Thank you to The Who for that. Number 21, David Bowie. Why so low? Because there's so many good acts, so many good acts. And I have to be honest about David Bowie. Ziggy Stardust, my introduction, perfect album. Uh, I remember buying a single that had Hung On to Yourself on it. And then Aladdin Sane had, that's when, well, Rebel Rebel was a single. What was it on that album? Because there's that one about Panic in Detroit, which is one of David Bowie's best written songs. He's a good writer. He's definitely a top 10 writer of all time. And that's further evidenced by the albums that came afterwards. It was Diamond Dogs, and that one has Young Americans on it, and Station to Station came after that. That's a perfect album. 6 songs, 6 perfect songs. Station to Station, the 10-minute opener, the closest David Bowie gets to rock music, right? And it's just everything's good on there. TVC 15, his versions of Wild as the Wind. It's just captivating. Word on a Wing, one of my favorites. Stay, yeah, so I'm naming the whole album. Golden Years, the single. See, there I named the whole album. And then, interestingly enough, right after that was Low in '77. And that album has got 2 sides to it, right? It's got the first side are these experimental pop songs. They're all short and they're all fantastic, like Always Crashing in the Same Car, Sound and Vision. And then the other side is the instrumentals, right? The Brian Eno influenced instrumentals, which are captivating in a totally different way, right? But it's a really schizophrenic record, right? There's definitely 2 sides to it. There's those perfect little pop masterpieces, and then on the other side there's contemplative Enoism. And then later on, the Heroes album, it's kind of a mixing of those two. I remember loving Moss Garden, the instrumental, right? Everybody loves Heroes. And there's that song on there, I think it's called Beauty and the Beast, or I hope I got the title right. Right. There's several good songs in that album. And then after that, Lodger. I like that one almost as much. It's kind of like a imperfect, perfect album. Uh, a lot of interesting cuts on there as well. But there's the remake of Red Money. I mean, well, it's called Red Money, but it's a remake of Sister Midnight, right? Love it. A song on the album for me. And then even Scary Monsters, right? 1980. Some perfection on there as well. Fashion. Oh, that reminds me, Fame. Yeah, back in '74, right, with John Lennon. That's pretty much perfection too. Yeah. So after that, there was Let's Dance. And in between that, there was Cat People, right, for the soundtrack. And that ended up on the album, a longer version, Let's Dance of Cat People. And that was his zenith, right? Once he hit that, it seemed like some of the wind came out of his sails. The album that came after that wasn't as successful. And after that, he was more of a particular taste. So I have just individual songs that I like. And possibly one of my favorite Bowie songs is I'm Afraid of Americans, right? Collaborating with Trent Reznor of Nine Inch Nails. That's a fantastic song. And then I like that song that was used in The Lost Highway, David Lynch movie. Uh, I'm Deranged. For some reason, I like that song. And it's a great, great example of one of the methods that David Bowie used to cut and paste lyrics. And it works. That's just one of the techniques he used. Let's see, so there's a lot to say about number 21, huh? All right, we're down to that was 20, 20 more to go. I'm going to keep going. Is that a wise decision? I could stop there, but I want to do the whole 40. I want to move on. I hope this video is not too long. Here we go. Number 20. Oh, another personal favorite, Randy Crawford. If you don't know her, check her out because she was such a wonderful singer. She's got one of the greatest voices, period, of any female singer because it has so much character. It's not powerful like Linda Ronstadt, but it's close. And it just has such character. And she originally, I think I heard her in that song Street Life by the Crusaders, 1979, I think it was. And then she came out with her first album produced by Joe Sample of the Crusaders, of course. And that was Now We May Begin, which is a fantastic near perfect record. And then she did make a perfect record in 1981, Secret Combination. That is perfection, top to bottom. She has always done remakes and original songs. So I think from 1980, the best song was One Day I'll Fly Away. Gorgeous. A lot of the good songs on there. There's the Danceland song, same old story, same old song. Oh no, I'm thinking of Aerosmith now, but and then from 81, Secret Combination. That's a great song. And there's just so many good songs on there. She does a remake of Rainy Night in Georgia. Gorgeous. You Might Need Somebody. That's a remake. Gorgeous. Uh, there's even a remake of Trade Winds. It's the last song on the album. Gorgeous. I could go on and on. What a great album Secret Combination is. And then she made a few more good records after that. Uh, she had a remake of Imagine, one of the best remixes of Imagine I've ever heard. Uh, and then she had a song, I think it was a 1988 song. What am I saying? An album, Abstract Emotions. It's probably her last near perfect album. That album's good top to bottom. I highly recommend Abstract Emotions. If you like that, you like everything Randy Crawford does, because that is her most average album. And I mean that in a good way. Yeah. And after that, her career kind of tailed off a bit. She, I think she picked songs that were too popular, and she was better when she was doing, the gems. Yeah, but she's still one of my favorites. Her she was bigger in England than in America. Lucky England, huh? Number 19. Speaking of England, Mike Oldfield. Everybody knows Tubular Bells, but I'm a fan of his 80s stuff, right? That's when he made individual songs as well as album side epics. Crises in 1983, great example of that. Discovery in 1984 is a perfect album for me. And then he had other records that were almost as good. After that, he met the mother of his child, right? His son, Anita Hedgerland, who has a gorgeous voice and is a gorgeous person for that matter. So she was easy to like, both in terms of beauty and singing. So I could see why he ended up having a child with her. But the music, Mike Oldfield of the 80s, I'm a big fan of it. I'm not as big a fan of the albums that a lot of people like Omnidon. I'm not as big a fan of that. Tubular Bells is good, but I really love the 80s ones. Crises, Discovery, Islands. That's the one with Anita Hedgerland on it. And Bonnie Tyler does this title cut, Islands. Earth Moving, probably his last great album. That album's pretty much almost perfect top to bottom, too. Different singers on it. Whew. Let's move on. Number 18. Oh, there's an easy choice, right? Rush. Some people are going to say, why so low? But this whole 40 is just awesome for me. And I asked myself the question, why put Rush over Mike Oldfield? Because I like them a little bit more than Mike Oldfield. Why put Mike Oldfield over Randy Crawford? Because I like Mike Oldfield a little more than Randy Crawford. Why Randy Crawford over David Bowie? Well, I have to admit, I like Randy Crawford a little more than David Bowie. That's kind of the way it goes. And Bowie over the Who. And so much heresy, I'm saying, huh? But when it comes to Rush, right, I think my introduction was 2112 and 76, but that's not true because I remember buying the album Fly By Night. That was the second album, the first with Neil Peart on it. And I liked that song, Fly By Night. And I bought Caress of Steel, which wasn't as popular, but a good album, right? The famous album that almost got them out of their record contract until they came up with 2112, which saved them. And then they went whole hog. Well, they were prog It started off hard rock, the first album, Working Man, Finding My Way, which is great stuff. I remember buying the live album, All the World's a Stage. All the highlights are there from their rock and roll Canadian Zeppelin years. And then in the late 70s, right, they had their prog phase with Farewell to Kings, which is a near perfect record. The Hemispheres, almost as good. And then they had another phase, right, where they discovered how to take that prog and pare it down, which I think a lot of other acts kind of copied that model. Although I think UK had something to do with that too, to have prog pop, right? And Moving Pictures, perfect album, right? The hits on for one side and extended pieces on the other side. So the extended pieces are the growers, but they eventually grow so much that you like them better than the hits. And so it's a tough battle there. And then, really, in my book, the album that came after that, Grace Under Pressure, I think that was in 1984, is a perfect album for me, right? Uh, I think that was the album where they discovered reggae. But I love every song. It was just great. And the live albums too, Exit Stage Laughter. Trying not remember all these titles, but then they had a Show of Hands that came later, right? Maybe after Power Windows, which was an album that had two great songs on it for me, and the rest of it, too much synthesizer. Yeah, to be honest, Rush kind of got a little boring for me after that. I can only think of a few songs after that that I still liked about Rush. They got too mid-tempo for my taste, too pop for my taste. But the rock phase, prog phase, and the prog pop phase, that's a solid, what, at least 10 years from 74 to 84, when they were just the bee's knees for me. And that's number 18. Let's go to 17. Oh, another easy choice. Pat from Close to the Edge, his favorite band is Emerson, Lake and Palmer. And they're one of my favorites too. They got the asterisk. I saw them live a few times. I saw them in 77 for the Pirates tour, right? I saw them later in the reunion, 92, Black Moon. And they were kind of different band in both cases, right? I did not see the original Carnation when they did Cal Jam in 1970, where I was too young. I was only 14, didn't go to concerts until I was 16. But those first four albums are fantastic, right? Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and Tarkus and Trilogy and Brain Salad Surgery. And I guess you have to count Pictures at an Exhibition too. So that's five. Pretty much perfect albums, right? And then they did Works, which was bloated, right? A side for each of them. And then a fourth side had Fanfare for the Common Man. What wonderful. And of course, Fanfare for the Common Man. That came out, what, 77, the Works album. And that was when I was a senior in high school. And I used to hang out in the band room with my music loving and music making friends. But I didn't quite have the talent. I just had the appreciation. So, Toccata. Okay. Yeah, Black Moon's good too. I remember taking my wife to see that, and so she could hear from the beginning. Uh, that was kind of the song we met over, my third wife and I. She had this song. She was from Mexico, and she heard the song from the beginning, but she didn't understand English well enough to know what the title of the song was. And she played it for me, and I go, "Oh yeah, that's from the beginning." Emerson, Lake and Palmer. So that helped us get going. Thank you, Emerson, Lake and Palmer. That was a 19-year relationship, the longest of my life. That was very memorable. Gotta move on. No, that's what I did. Number 16, there's the Rolling Stones. Too low, you say? Well, maybe so, but then again, this is where I have to admit I was not a child of the 60s. So for me, it's the 70s Stones. Sticky Fingers, practically a perfect album. For all intents and purposes, a perfect album. And it had those big hits, Brown Sugar, which is nowadays kind of banned because of the lyrics. It was a great song. And then there's Bitch. right? There's another politically incorrect song, which is fantastic. And was that Wild Horses, one of their best ballads. So after that came Exile on Main Street, which I have to admit I couldn't get into except for Tumbling Dice when I was so young, too young for that. I was only 12. And the next year, though, they came out with Goat's Head Soup, 73. Angie was a huge hit. Everybody loved, and I liked Heartbreaker. So that was good. But I liked even more, I guess it was 74, It's Only Rock and Roll, right? That was a great album. I loved that one top to bottom. I liked obscure stuff like Fingerprint File. Yeah, good album. They had some good remix in there. Ain't Too Proud to Beg was one of the best remixes of that song, Temptation song. And then, surprisingly enough, when I was 16, 76, they came out with Black and Blue, which was a really transitional album for them because all that great 70s stuff had been with Mick Taylor on guitar. He left the group. So they were auditioning guys, right? One of them was Ron Wood, who became the new member. And Black and Blue, I love that album. It's only 8 songs, 8 great songs, 8 great songs. I could just enjoy them so much because you didn't hear them so much on the radio, although you probably heard Hot Stuff or Fool to Cry. Those are just not their most famous songs. Maybe that's why I like the album so much. It had another great ballad on it, Memory Motel. That's great. And then a couple years later, they come out with Some Girls, right? Another near perfect album, huge hit. And after that, they got spotty. Yeah. And I don't know. I saw some videos of them performing live, and I thought, oh, this is not to the prog standards. So I never saw them live for that reason. 15. Now, here's a band I've seen live several times because it just circumstances made it happen. Like I went to a Dodger game, and I think it was after the game. The Doobie Brothers were in concert along with John George Thorogood. That's it, George Thorogood. So the Doobie Brothers, I enjoyed them from the get-go because they were in the top 40 in the early 70s. Those huge hits, uh, Walking Down the Highway, Long Train Running. And then in 74, was it? Over Once Vices or No Habits, or that's 74, 75. I'm not sure. Might have been 74. Might have been 73. Yeah. Captain and Me, that album was 72. Yeah. So it came after Captain and Me. And before that was Toulouse Street, their second album, which is, for me, is a perfect album. Just like Captain and Me is a perfect album. And One More Once Vices or No Habits is a perfect album. So they had 3 perfect albums in a row for me. And then Stampede came out, 75. That was 75. Yeah. But that one was a little spotty. I didn't like the production so much on that one. And it was later confirmed for me because they came out with the Quadio albums. These 4 albums that I just mentioned were all recorded in quadraphonic stereo. And they eventually became available in quadraphonic stereo digitally. They're originally on albums, but digitally. Then I got a chance to hear the 4 tracks separated into two and two. And it's like an unplugged version of the Doobie Brothers to hear just 2 of the 4 tracks. And I loved it. I loved Stampede that way. Check that out. I personally posted some videos on Find Music channel here of the Doobie Brothers in 2 track quadraphonic. It's really good, just really good. The separation is perfection. They were recorded so well. Those albums were recorded so well. But my favorite of those has to be Were Once Spices or No Habits. Everybody knows Black Water was a #1 hit, but every song on that album is good for me. Uh, Tell Me What You Want, I'll Give You What You Need. Might be my favorite song on that album. There's every song on that album is great. It starts off so great. Song to See You Through and Spirit, those 2 songs. What a marvelous album. Moving on. Happy Rose. Now, there's a name you might not know. And I only discovered Happy Roads because I heard on one of those new wave radio stations in the early 90s. It was 93, I think it was. I heard that song, Feed the Fire. And it was unlike anything I'd heard, and then it name dropped, yes, it come later in the list, and David Bowie, which you already heard. And I was, wow, what a voice she had. She had a multi-octave voice. She could do this low voice and a high voice and an in-between voice. It was just so interesting. She was kind of goth, uh, even though the name is Happy Roads. Look at the album covers of her first few albums, they were very gothic. And I bought Happy Roads 1, which was a compilation from the cassettes she originally made. And Happy Roads 2, also a compilation from those original 1986 cassettes. Those are perfect albums. And then Ecto is a perfect album. And Equipoise is a perfect album. And Road Songs was the compilation album I bought in 1993 that introduced me to Happy Roads. Some of her very best songs are on there. And then I ventured into those other albums. And I loved them all. Loved them all. What an artist. She should have been far more famous than she was. I understand she was kind of a Eastern US phenomenon for a while. She should have been nationally, if not internationally famous, because what a voice, what songwriting skill. Uh, I'd pick almost anything by her. God, if I had to recommend something, what would I recommend? Just so many good songs. The Wretch Has Gone Awry is kind of that Kate Bush style. Kate Bush is just outside of my top 40. Yeah. But Happy Roads, I like even more than Kate Bush. And I love Kate Bush, but Happy Roads even more. Yeah. Save Our Souls. That's a great song. When the Rain Came Down, these are perfection for me. Check out Happy Roads. I'm very interested to hear what you think. Lucky number 13 is another newer band, Dead Can Dance, right, from the 90s. Uh, what did I hear? I heard the song from the live album. I think it's called Toward the Within, if I have that right. And it's that song. I keep getting it confused with other artists. So it's blanking. I'm blanking out on it at the moment. Hopefully, it'll come back to me as I talk about Dick and Dance. But I heard that song and it was awesome. So I checked out more of their music, and it was also very good. And they would have these individual songs that became my favorites, partly because of the voice of Brandon Perry and Lisa Gerard too. They had two lead vocalists, both phenomenal, especially Brandon Perry. Just as a voice I fell in love with immediately. Just he could sing the phone book. And they had that song later on. It was called Utopia. Well, that was Brandon Perry, Utopia. Opium is the one with Dead Can Dance. Perfect songs. His solo record, I think it's called Arc, or is it? That's no, that sounds more like Jerry Rafferty, who missed my top 40, but he was in the running. Uh, anyway, so his solo record, 2010 solo record, had Utopia on it, and some other great songs like The Devil in the Deep Blue Sea, not the George Harrison one, which was a remake. This is original, and his lyrics are really well thought out, very meaningful lyrics, and his singing, like I'm raving about. And then with the band, they had several good songs. The two of them kind of took turns having great songs. Uh, there's that song Indus, Indus. It's one of my absolute favorites, and it has this little section. It's like a 9-minute song, and there's a little section in the middle. Might sound familiar. Oh, isn't that George Harrison with the Beatles? That instrumental with Anyone Without You, right? But it's an Indian tune. That's why. you would hear that. Dead Can Dance, they would reference ancient songs and update them. And so it was just magical. Dead Can Dance, such a magical band for me. Uh, Come on, what's the name of the song? Starts with an R. Oh, I'm killing myself for not remembering it because I keep thinking of Raphael. That's not the name of it, is it? No, no, no. It's called something else. 'Cause Raphael was a new age artist that missed my top 40. But if you've never heard of him, check him out as well, Raphael. Just some very emotionally evocative music. Dead Can Dance. Come on. Any others? There's a compilation of early Dead Can Dance called Wake, which is beautiful. I think there's a song on there, Mr. Lovegrove by Brendan Perry. Great song. So many great songs. I got to get off of them. I'm spending too much time on Dead Can Dance. If you don't know them, check them out because they're one of my absolute faves. Number 12. Things might get more obvious here as we go on. But as a 70s teenager, Pink Floyd, come on. I heard Dark Side of the Moon when I was playing poker at a friend's house. Fell in love with it right away, right? It was the album of 1973. Yes, I was playing poker at 13. And in 75, they came out with Wish You Were Here. Perfect album, just like Dark Side of the Moon. Animals, 77, perfect album. The Wall, near perfect, 1979. And I caught Pink Floyd live in 77 for the Animals tour at Anaheim Stadium. It had that surround sound, fantastic sound. And then they did something most bands don't do. They played a whole album for the first half of the show, and then another album was the second half. I think they started with I think they started with Animals and then they did Wish You Were Here, those two albums. And then the encores were from Dark Side of the Moon, like Money. That was perfection. And it's so funny. I uh I went to that concert with my boombox, which is not a very large boombox, about half size boombox. I took it with me to the concert, and I told the guy, who's screening everybody, I said, "Oh, I'm just bringing this to play during intermission," and he let me in. And I recorded the show. It was only a 90-minute cassette, so I got the first album on one side and the other album on the other side. But I lost the cassette over time. What a loss! But there are other bootlegs, so I don't feel too bad. It was so funny that I got away with that. What else? Pink Floyd, The Wall. Saw the Wall concert as well at the LA Sports Arena. What a show. I mean, I can understand why The Wall became a movie, right? Because it really is a movie of music. Tells a story. It's got to be the second best concept album behind Tommy, The Wall. They're both very solid concept. Musically, not as good as Tommy, but it had its highlights, and the writing is just. I mean, Roger Waters' writing. He's one of the great writers as well, right? Dark Side of the Moon, Wish You Were Here, Animals, right? Animal Farm, Adapted, and Dogs, Pigs, Sheep, and The Wall, right? And after that, he kind of disappeared up his own ego for the final cut and his solo records. And Pink Floyd wasn't the same without him. I don't think anybody's going to argue that. Number 11, Kraftwerk, hugely influential to me in a very interesting way because I heard Autobahn as a hit single, right? Short little edited Autobahn as a hit single, and I loved it so much I bought the album in 1974 when I was 14, and that album was so different from anything I'd ever heard. Right? It was electronic, and these electronic sound experiments on the second side. The first side was the full length Autobahn, 22 minutes or something. And on the other side were these sound experiments, and they were in German, of course, being a German band, like Mitternacht, which means midnight, and then uh, the Comet songs. They had one and two. Comet Melody, it was called, but in German, Comet and Melody with the IE. And then they had the morning song. Yeah, it was just perfection. And it opened up a new world for me of ambient music, electronic music I'd never heard of before. And I just sought it out after that. I discovered some. They're going to be in my top 10, right? I already mentioned Raphael, who just missed making the 40. Let's see what number 10 is. Sweet. Yeah, they're not the sweet. They preferred sweet. Okay. Sweet, the ultimate guilty pleasure for me. I like ABBA, but I love Sweet and just about anything they ever recorded. They are so much more than just Little Willie or Ballroom Blitz or Love is Like Oxygen. So much more than that. Every album from The American Desolation Boulevard to Give Us a Wink to Off the Record to uh, Level Headed to even Cut Above the Rest, which Brian Connolly had to leave the group on that album because of his health. Right, he was not. I think he was an alcoholic or something, and it really did a number on him. And he died at an early age, right, in his 40s. But Desolation Boulevard, when I was 70 in 1975, when I was 15, that was the bee's knees, man. We just totally dug that record, all of it. It was like a greatest hits album, right? It was two albums put together, two English albums put together, Sweet Fanny Adams and Desolation Boulevard, the English one. Put them together, highlights the best songs, 10 pieces of perfection. So naturally, I bought Give Us a Wink, which was also, for me, 10 pieces of perfection. Action was the hit single. And then off the record, Stairway to the Stars and Level Headed had that song, Lady of the Lake. Beautiful song. Beautiful song. And I'm not talking Rick Wakeman here. Uh, yeah, so much to like. Even their obscure songs, like I think Cover Girl was the B-side. Had a lot of great B-sides to their singles. So much to love. Love that band. I was just born too late to see him live, but love them for a long time. Definitely top 10 for me. Number nine. Probably my favorite modern band, like the 90s and beyond, is the Charlatans, or in America, the Charlatans UK. In 1990, they came out with that first album, Some Friendly. Perfect album. Between second album, Between 10th and 11th, perfect album. Third album, Up to Our Hips, perfect album. Fourth album, self-titled, I didn't like that album. They were trying too much to be like the Rolling Stones. I didn't like it. Fifth album, telling stories after the death of their keyboardist. They had to recruit a new keyboardist, and so there's some memorial songs on there for Rob. Uh, that's a great album. It had their biggest hits, I think, in England, One to Another and North Country Boy. But there's a lot of good songs on that album. Two of Us, great song. And then in 1997, if I have my bearings right, or 1999, they had a single called Forever. I think it was 1999 because 97 was the compilation album. That's right. 99, Us and Us Only, Forever, their best song. And they have a lot of good songs. I mean, that is tight competition for the best Charleston song for me. That album was their kind of their Dylan album. Had some country flavor in it. Is That's one thing that's interesting about the Charlatans. They always tried new wrinkles in their music. So every album's a little different. It's like they started off I think they called it the Manchester Sound, that first album, right? It had some Who references in there, especially Frost and Green, the final song at the end, which is probably their most popular concert song. Got the Who references in there. And then they had the second album, between 10th and 11th, had Weirdo. The song title fits the song. And then Patrol from Up to Our Hips, more of a more dance oriented, right? And that's just the 90s. And then the 2000s, they just kept on rolling. For me, they got a little softer, but 2004, an album that was not released in America. But before that, there was 2001, Wonderland, which was their LA album. All right, really dance, their most dance-oriented album. And on that album, Tim Burgess, the lead singer, who had made a couple good records on his own. I could almost put his name there, but not quite. He's a good songwriter, but not one of the very best. But a good songwriter, don't get me wrong. And Wonderland, some great songs. And he even experimented with his voice. That's what I was going to talk about. He tried a falsetto, which was interesting. I like that song Judas, using the falsetto. It's a good song. And there was a hit on that album, You're So Pretty, We're So Pretty. And just even the tracks on the album, like Is It In You? Love that song. It's just Charlatans for me, definitely my favorite band of the 90s and 21st century, even above Nine Inch Nails, as you can see. 2004, I was talking about the album that was not released in America, Up at the Lake, which is a perfect pop record. It's their perfect pop record. Uh, uh, they have a song called Loving You Is Easy on there, which definitely fits my loving feelings. Uh, After that, they had their reggae album, Simpatico, came out was that 2006? That's a good record. It's a simpler record, simpler. It's got some good songs on there. Not as complex. Muddy Ground is a good song, comes to mind right away. And then 2008 was the free record, right? There was kind of a trend around that to have a free album to introduce people to the band. And that was a great album. You Crossed My Path. That was the name of that record. And it's a perfect album. I mean, so many perfect records for me from the Charlatans. But that might have been the last one that was perfect because 2010, Who We Touch, the first seven songs are perfect, and then it trails a bit after that. Got a great bonus track on that album, Acid in the Tea. Might be better than the rest of the songs in the album. After that, it gets spotty. Gets spotty, but still, when they're good, they're good. And every album has at least three classics on it. Great band. If you haven't heard the Charlatans and you like music with a foot in the 60s, right? They used a lot of Hammond organ before their keyboardist died in the car crash. Uh, so there's a lot to like there for somebody who likes 60s and 70s music. You'll like the Charlatans as well for that organ sound. And then the drummer died after that in 2010. So that was a blow. That was a definite blow to the band. It was a great drummer. Okay, great. We're in home stretch and I'm losing my voice. Ian Hunter, Mount the Hoople, bow down. I'm gonna get a drink here. Ah, that better. Now I can do the last eight. I hope you're still with me, everybody. This is my longest video ever. But these 40 bands are so special to me. 40 musical acts. My favorites. Ian Hunter, Mott the Hoople. Love them both just as much, right? Ian Hunter, the leading guiding voice and songwriter of Mott the Hoople, one of the greatest songwriters of all time. Mott the Hoople, 69 to 1974. They were together. I love their first two albums a whole lot. The first one had an instrumental version of You Really Got Me. The second album had two of my favorite ballads written by Ian Hunter, When My Mind's Gone and I Can Feel. Those are wonderful. I mean, he was really good at the long ballad, right? He was initially trying to be like Bob Dylan, but he had his own thing, really. He got over the Dylan thing pretty quick. There was that song, Half Moon Bay, I think it was on the first album. It's really good. And then the third album went a little bit in a country direction, didn't really quite work. They're better as a hard rock band. I mean, they're a hard rock band. If you know the hits that came later, see, because what happened was they did the fourth album, Brain Capers, which is pretty much a perfect album. Uh, the second album, Mad Shadows, had the two ballads I love on it, is a near perfect album as well. And so Brain Capers came out and it kind of stiffed commercially, but it's a near perfect album. Rock and roll. I mean, I don't understand it, but I guess it's just is not commercial. So what happened? David Bowie steps in and gives them Suffragette City, which they refuse. And then he gives them all the young dudes, and the rest is history, right? That made Mott the Hoople, and they kind of became glam rock after that. And so they had those albums, all the young dudes and Mott, and then the Hoople, and then Ian Hunter left the band in '74. Took Mick Ronson with him. Mick Ronson was only there at the very end, right? Mick Rouse was the one who was there for the hits, right? And he went into bad company, of course, which I'll be mentioning later, not much later. So that was it for Mott the Hoople. But Ian Hunter made his first solo record, which is pretty much a perfect album. For my favorite song on that album is "Who Do You Love?" And just everything on the album's great. The truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. Is that on that album? Yeah, I don't know. I'm getting bleary-eyed. But All American Alien Boy, almost as good. The highs are high. The rest not so good. God Take One is one of the very best songs ever written. So daring, so truthful. Just love Ian Hunter's songwriting. Uh, see, after that there was You're Never Alone with Schizophrenic, '78, I think it was. That's a perfect album, right? Even to the extent that Barry Manilow did a cover of Ships, which is not the best song on the album, but Bastard is probably the best song on the album. Life After Death is maybe my favorite song on the album. It's that great songwriting, Ian Hunter, matched with the great rock and roll. Uh, and then even then, that's not the end of it. I have to mention in 2001, I think it was, he did an album called Rant, another perfect album with the Rant Band. And so they did some albums together, which were almost as good, but 2001's Rant, that is a perfect album. It has a song on it, Dead Man Walking, another one of those fantastic truth songs. Uh, just musical perfection. Seven to go. Will we survive? Here we go. Peter Gabriel and Genesis. Oh, too low, you say? Yeah, I love Genesis. I love Peter Gabriel, but not as much as the first six. I mean, I think my introduction to Genesis was in '76, '77, really. '77 with Wind and Wuthering, '76, '77, right? End of the year. I heard that song Your Own Special Way, which was romantic, but at the same time also very interesting instrumentally, right? And I was just getting into prog. So I bought the album, and there was so much good prog on there, kind of a goofy storytelling, actually, right? All on a Mouse's Night. But then they had more serious stuff like Blood on the Rooftops. So great album, almost perfect. And Trick of the Tail that came before it in '76, which I learned about later, is another perfect album. And this is all with Phil Collins as the lead singer, right? Because Peter Gabriel left after 1974's Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, which is a near perfect record for me too, right? Especially the first two-thirds of it, perfection. And then, I dipped even farther into the catalog. Selling England by the Pound is a near perfect record, right? And Foxtrot has two of my absolute favorite Genesis songs on it, right? Supper's Ready, one of the greatest songs ever made. Watcher of the Skies, almost one of the greatest, right? 7 minutes. And Supper's Ready, 23 minutes, I think it was. Just an astounding achievement. I could see why there might have been some differences in the band to go in different directions. And so it was a good thing that Peter Gabriel went solo because his solo records, every bit as good and different. Right, that first album, loved it. Saw Peter Gabriel live at the Roxy, saw Genesis live that same year, 1980, at the Greek Theater. I had really bad seats in the benches, but I loved it. It wasn't that loud, but it was good. They opened with Deep in the Mother Lode from that, and then there were three albums after Steve Hackett left, right? Because Steve Hackett, the guitarist, really made Trick of the Tail and Selling England by the Pound and Wind and Wuthering great albums because of his guitar work. So ethereal. And then Peter Gabriel came out with his second record, I think it was in '79. Peter Gabriel 2, right? They're just all called Peter Gabriel, the first four albums. And I love Peter Gabriel 2, produced by Robert Fripp. Huge Robert Fripp influence. Even though King Crimson doesn't make my top 40, sorry guys, but I can appreciate that first album, of course, in the Court of the Crimson King. And Robert Fripp, brilliant mind, hired brilliant people, stole Bill Bruford from Yes, things like that. Uh, John Lennon with UK. Okay, get back on track here. Genesis had, and there were three very spotty record, but Deep in the Motherlode, well, I loved it a lot. The rest of it, not so much. Then they came out with Duke in 1980, which was a great comeback album. Really well done. I think this is where Phil Collins discovered his muse, and it went through the whole record. Then he went solo, right? And he had his first solo record was almost as good. But after Duke, Abacab was more of an experiment, 1981, a good experiment, very experimental. Then the self-titled Genesis album in '83. In the early '80s, that trend had come where the prog bands were going pop, and so Genesis did that just as well as about anybody else, like Asia and Yes. So that worked to an extent, but it wasn't quite as satisfying as everything that come before. After that, well, they just went pretty much totally pop, and the pop overtook prog completely. And that was the end of Genesis for me. Number six, here we go. Told you they'd come up. Free and Bad Company. Bad Company, top 40, 1974, I think it was. First album, Bad Company. An album that I only checked out because I was a freshman in high school and I was the record dealer in my high school. I was buying albums, recording them on a cassette, and selling the albums to my friends. And one of my friends said, "Oh, you got to get the new Bad Company." Oh, their first album, and it is a perfect album. The second album, not as perfect. It had many good songs, but it kind of tailed off toward the end of the album. The third album for me is my favorite Bad Company record, Run with the Pack. I love that album, every song on it, perfect record. I talked about that in my 1976 video. Then they came out with Burning Sky in 77, almost as perfect. Kind of imperfectly perfect. I've said that before for some other artists. That album works for me because of its imperfection. And I can even take that a step farther because after that, Desolation Angels, only the hits worked for me and the rest of it not so much. But then the last album with Paul Rogers on it was one that had a Electric Land, 1982, 1982, I think it was. And that album was even more countrified, but I liked it. I liked every song on that album. It was called Rough Diamonds. That was the name of the album. And so I would recommend his perfect albums, Rough Diamonds and Run with the Pack and the original Bad Company album, the first album. Those are perfect albums, which all led me to investigate Paul's previous band, Free. Everybody had heard the hit song 1970, All Right Now, which was very early in my musical life. I was only 10. So I didn't really, I think most people didn't connect that they had anything else that was good, but was I ever wrong? When I delved into their catalog, to me, Free is, in a sense, better and more pure than Bad Company when it comes to blues rock. Probably because the four members are so good. I mean, Simon Kirk, the drummer, he was in Bad Company too. Though Paul Kossoff, the guitarist, so emotive, so interesting. Mick Ralphs was more of a cruncher, Bad Company and Mott the Hoople. And then there was the Secret Weapon, the bass player for Free, Andy Fraser, just a delight. He was a delight. And they would have some just delightful songs. Like the one that comes to mind right away is Ride on a Pony. But there's so many good songs. The first album, I think, came out in 68, definitely before my time. Tons of sobs. They had that song on it, Oh, I Wept. Oh, perfection. So many great songs. Uh, there were two albums. One was called Highway, came out in 1970. It had Ride on a Pony on it and some other great songs. Uh, and there was Heartbreaker, came out in 73. Bit of a lineup change because Paul Kossoff kind of lost it. And that was a great album too. And even the album after that, or was it the album before that? I think it was the album before that, Free at Last. It was either before or after that. And that album, much to my surprise, I didn't like the production of that album. It was just not as heavy. And then years later, they came out with a box set for Free. And there are the original demos for those songs that were on Free at Last. And I loved the demos. They're so much better than the album. What a great bunch of songs. Not the whole album, but most of it. So Free never had a perfect record, really, but the highlights are so high on every album. They have like the perfect songs and the near perfect songs, and then the ones that don't quite get there, but they're okay. They didn't really have any bad songs. Okay, number five. Woo, the Moody Blues. Right, everybody knows about the perfect seven albums, right? They really are awesome. Days of Future Past, uh, In Search of the Lost Chord might be my favorite Moody Blues album. On the Threshold of a Dream, To Our Children's Children, Question of Balance. Oh my God, Seventh Sojourn. Oh, the one in between. Every Good Boy Deserves Favor. That was the sixth album, probably the least perfect of the seven albums. They all got so much to offer. And Moody Blues is definitely one of my absolute favorites because the songs were meaningful, interesting to hear. They're the precursors of prog. Uh, just love so many of their songs. Uh, where do I begin? So many songs. It's almost futile to name them all. right? Candle of Life, Out in It. Uh, what's that one from Every Good Boy Deserves Favor? Very majestic song. Can't think of it right now. So many. Seventh Soldier, that was 72, right? That had I'm just a singer in a rock and roll band, but even better, Isn't Life Strange? And I remember the first Moody Blues record I bought was This Is the Moody Blues, the compilation album. Two record set had the best songs from those albums. So that's a perfect compilation. But then the albums are great too. I mean, for me, In Search of the Lost Chord is a perfect album. Days of Future Past, not quite perfect. Good highlights, not so great. And highlights in every album. If you love one Moody song, you'll probably love them all. They're great. We're down to the final four. It's getting dark. Led Zeppelin, how obvious, huh? I saw him live, 1977. Very proud to say on the President's Tour. Saw him live, and it was a great show. The show was like almost 3.5 hours long, I think it was. They did like a half-hour version of Dazed and Confused. A lot of people stepping out to get refreshments during that. But what a band! What a band! What a band live. I mean, they were the best of the 70s, pretty much. Perfect albums. First album, perfect. Second album, perfect. Third album, near perfect. Fourth album, the most legendary, right? Stairway to Heaven album. The fifth album, House of the Holy, near perfect, except for the crunge. Love that album, the Rain Song. No Quarter. Oh, perfection. Then comes Physical Graffiti, 1975, the two record set, which is pretty close to a perfect double album. So many crunchers on there. Just love you can rock out to Zeppelin, that's for sure. Unlike anybody else. I have to admit, initially I did not like Trampled Underfoot. It was too frenetic for me, but I've learned to dig it. Right? It was so obvious to like Kashmir, but the longest song on the album might be my favorite, In My Time of Dying. Yeah. And then in 76, Presence, right? The album they made quickly because Robert Plant had the accident. So he was in a wheelchair. But what a rocking record that is. Presence is, I think, it might be the winner for best Zeppelin album for me because it rocks so well. Nobody's Fault But Mine, Hot Sound for Nowhere. Just a lot of good songs. And the last song was the big surprise, T for One. Uh, Everybody knows Since I've Been Loving You, right? And the T for One is like Since I've Been Loving You Part Two. It's a really dreamy blues record, blues song, and it might be my favorite Zeppelin song. It's the one that, after listening to so much Led Zeppelin, it's one of my absolute favorites. And then came In Through the Outdoor, the final album, which is a good record. They never made a bad record. More keyboard driven, right? Everybody knows. Fine album. And that was the end of Led Zeppelin. Number three, there's a Yes. You know that was coming. I mentioned them before. Yes was my number one band for many, many years, especially the 70s. But I would call them my favorite band because I would see Yes from 1977 when I discovered them onward. I would see them in concert every year. I've seen them live somewhere between 30 to 40 times. Hands down, one of the very best live bands of the 70s into the 80s. Of course, they changed a bit, right? 70s albums. The first two records are very good. Came out in 69, right? The Yes album and Time and a Word. Those are good records. They were finding their sound, and then they found it when they got Steve Howe in 1970 for the Yes album. That was the first pretty much perfect record. Got a couple interludes in there, but four amazing songs that everybody should know. And then Fragile came out after that in late 71. early 72, four perfect songs, and the interludes were better. And then Close to the Edge 72, the perfect album, one of the very perfect albums. Right? It's only three songs. That helps. All right. Close to the Edge, 18, 19 minutes of perfection. And You and I, probably emotionally their best song for me. It's an album that just takes me to heaven. I mean, it's a song that takes me to heaven. And then Siberian Khatru, right? They would open their concerts in the 70s with Siberian Khatru. What a way to open a concert. Oh my God. And then going into Heart of the Sunrise after that. What a perfect start for a concert. The 80s came along and right, you had the lineup changes. 90125, Trevor Rabin joins, and they become not a prog band, more of a prog pop band, right? Prog rock, more emphasis on the rock than the prog. Owner of a Lonely Heart. But I was like, yeah, what a great album. Trevor Rabin, great guy. Took Yes to number one, like never happened before, and great concerts too. I remember the concert. 87, bit of a come down with Big Generator. Uh, and they splintered after that. You had ABWH, right? Anderson, River, Wakeman, Howe, which was good. And then they got together for Union. Unfortunately, the album got overproduced. They produced the original players out of it, which was a big mistake because players are so good. And you listen to some of the demos, I like them better. Some of those demos are better. And same is true for a Big Generator. Some of the demos are better than the actual album versions. Check that out. Well, and then after that, what happened? They talk 1994. Great album. Love it. Near perfect. And after that, we had the Keys to Ascension thing, which was two live albums with packed on some of their best music since the 70s because it was the reunion of the classic Yes band, and those songs are fantastic. And that didn't last long at all because I guess Wakeman couldn't tour with them. So they made Open Your Eyes, which should have been the Chris Squire's second solo record, made with Billy Sherwood, though, right? So it would have been Conspiracy. But yeah, after that, they just had a couple more albums in them that were good. The Ladder, good album. Magnification, good album. A little better. They're both great. Ladder grew on me. Magnification, I liked it all along. It was like Moody Blues, Yes version of Moody Blues, you know. But after that, that was yeah. And then they went into the wilderness without John Anderson. So not much to talk about there, except for maybe Fly From Here, which was back in 1980 drama, right? The first album made without John Anderson. Was very good. That was a good incarnation, but that's not as good as the original incarnations, which brings me to number two. Here's a guy who almost became a member of Yes, right? When Wakeman left the first time, John Anderson brought Vangelis in, and it didn't work out because Vangelis is just too much of a multi-instrumentalist, too much of an individual talent. And how am I placing him above? Yes, it's because I think my first real introduction to him was Chariots of Fire. Yeah, it's very good. That was what, 81? And then came Blade Runner, 82. Very good. The movie and the soundtrack. One of the very best. And then I learned about Heaven and Hell, which had the John Anderson guesting on it for So Long Ago, So Clear, one of their very best collaborations. They made the John Evangelis albums, short stories, private collection. Well, that was the third one. The second one was Friends of Mr. Cairo. And those were so different. They were so different. It was not like Yes, because John Anderson found simplicity, but Vangelis made the instrumentation interesting. So those were good albums. And they did one last one together, Page of Life. I think it was in the late 80s. 91 maybe even, and that was just as good as the others, maybe better. And then they kind of broke up. And Vangelis just all along had been making great music, great albums. China in 1979, love it a lot. It's not a soundtrack, but Antarctica is. I think that was in '83. Near perfect record, some of the most sublime moments Vangelis has ever recorded. And then after that comes to mind the 1492 soundtrack, Conquest of Paradise, that came out in 1992. That is his best album, and it is perfection. It's a movie in itself. It really is. Better than a movie. How many soundtracks can you say that? Better than a movie. Uh, he just had a lot of good individual albums after that, and so much of it that listening to it, it kind of harkens back to my original Kraftwerk experience, that instrumental music, which I learned to love. Ambient music, electronic music, a lot of favorites, but none of them made the top 40, which leaves number one. Hmm, who could that be? Oh, the most obvious of them all, the Beatles. The band I can't get away from. I got my introduction to the Beatles, I think, in 1965 when I was 5 years old. I watched the Beatles cartoons, but of course the music didn't land. I was only five. I watched it for the cartoon, you know. Maybe the songs were nice. That's all I can say. But then, I think it was in 1970, the last Beatles album, Let It Be. I might have heard some of that on the top 40, right? I don't really remember. Let It Be, Long and Winding Road, right? And then I think I remember in '73 when I was 13, I was at my friend's house, a couple doors down. He got the Red and the Blue albums, 62, 66, and 67, 70. And we listened to those and everything was good on there. That's when I realized the Beatles were the best. And then I went into the individual albums and to see the arc of their progression that I missed not being a child of the 60s was just, like anyone would say, groundbreaking, revolutionary, transformation of music. Uh, Bob Dylan had an influence there, of course, but the Beatles themselves became artists after they stopped touring, and they made Rubber Soul before they stopped touring, and that was when they diverted away from the boy bandness of love songs. Revolver, perfect album. Rubber Soul, near perfect. Revolver, their best album, probably. Perfection. So experimental. Every song so different from the other. And then Sergeant Pepper, the legend. Magical Mystery Tour was an album in the U.S. Perfection. The White Album, probably their most interesting album because it's such variety. So it was very highly ranked for me. And then Abbey Road, 1969, their last hurrah, recorded after Let It Be. Let It Be recorded in 68, right? They shelved it. Then they made Abbey Road a near perfect record. Pretty much, pretty close to being a perfect record and one of the best sellers of all time. I think, like anyone else, I love the medley. I love the individual songs, George Harrison songs, right? He really came into his own on the White Album, While My Guitar Gently Weeps, better than anything else on the record. Same is true, I guess, for Abbey Road, Something and Here Comes the Sun, true highlights of Abbey Road. Uh, John Lennon, though, right? Always brilliant, right? For a long time, he was the leader of the Beatles. I think it was a Help album, mostly John Lennon songs. Great album, and he just kept breaking ground, right? You have Tomorrow Never Knows, and Rain before that, right? Rain, 65, 66, Tomorrow Never Knows, 66. The end of the, he would put his songs on the end of the album because they were the most groundbreaking. Tomorrow Never Knows, and then A Day in the Life. Sergeant Pepper, one of the greatest songs ever made in terms of artistry, a real collaboration with Paul McCartney. And then he did the ones that were on Magical Mystery Tour. I Am the Walrus. I think of that. I think of Paul McCartney doing Eleanor Rigby back on Revolver. Right? These are just high works of art, uh, emulated by so many. Right? They busted open the doors of making albums meaningful, top to bottom, not just filler, but art, artistic work. Yeah. So there's my top 40. It's getting dark now. I'm afraid to see how long this video is, but I want to thank you for listening to my top 40. I hope you like a lot of it and venture into the ones you don't know. Okay, so I'll stop the share and say thank you as I start to fade into the darkness. See you soon.